So this will be the third part in a series of 3 regarding my life with Hashimoto's, at least up until this point. I have decided once this video is complete and that series is done that I will do another video on the things I've learned. I will probably do another one that's separate from that on some resources that I found really helpful in this journey. And I will do another one on current medicines and supplements. And then I will probably move into a weekly update into how I'm feeling when I go to doctor's appointments, that type of thing. But if there's anything specific you'd like to see or ask me, please put it in the comments or contact me directly. I'm happy to address that. I do want to point out that I received a message from someone earlier this week about whether or not I'd ever had a thyroid ultrasound and or nodules diagnosed on my thyroid. I have not had a thyroid ultrasound. I was never considered a candidate for that in any of my standard healthcare treatment options that I went through. And then now under my current journey with Dr. Sheridan at the Hotze Health and Wellness Center, that has never come up and I've never asked. I trust him with my treatment, so at this point I have no reason to believe that I need a thyroid ultrasound. There are a lot of people who have had them, who have been diagnosed with nodules, and I can certainly discuss that when I go into resources, because there are some helpful resources regarding that particular aspect of thyroid problems. So for this video, I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday, which is that late 2013, early 2014 span of time. My then boyfriend, now husband, and I had been together for about 5 years, and he was really struggling with some problems with his neck and arm and back, and he was diagnosed with some disc problems up here in the cervical area, and he ended up having to have a discectomy and fusion. He has a great video about his recovery from that particular aspect of his life on YouTube. If you're interested, contact me. I'll let you know what that is. And in the fall of 2013, he ended up having surgery for that. He had also suffered for quite some time with lower back problems. He had been a wakeboarder in his youth and had managed to get a couple of slip discs in his lower back. After he had really good success and a really great surgeon in the fall of 2013, in the spring of 2014, he opted to have the lower fixed as well. It was really stressful and hard on our relationship, as it would be for anyone, but it was hard for me because I don't deal with stress really well. I keep things together, but inside I sort of just fall apart. And 2014 was a tough year, and I, at the same time, was struggling with some things going on at my job at the time. And I decided that it was time for a change. In the winter of 2015, earlier this year, I actually left that job and decided to stake my hand out at something else. And I was still going through my regular treatment with my GP. I was on Armour. I was happy with the dose. Everything was fine until about the time that I left that job, which is at the end of March 2015. I went to work and for this other company, and it was really bad. I actually ended up not even making it 3 days. It was very stressful, and it was not a good environment for me, and I left and I was unemployed, and it was really scary, and it was very, very, very stressful, and I literally just fell apart. I started having all kinds of issues with, I was very shaky, I was having a hard time sleeping, but then during the afternoon I would get super sleepy. I felt really annoyed, but it didn't feel hormonal, such as female hormones. I just felt really tense and on edge. And of course I chalked it all up. It was a huge change that had happened in the last year, and I was right in the middle of suffering from this situation with the job. I was lucky enough to connect back up with a former colleague and get hired onto a company I'd worked for before within about 3 weeks of leaving the really bad job, and that was very, very fortunate. So by mid-April I'm employed again, and things are going along okay, except I do not feel good at all. and I can tell I am just falling apart. I'm having a lot of the same symptoms that I was struggling with in 2006 when I called my sister in tears. Fatigue, overwhelming fatigue, just sort of almost depression. Like he said in another video, I know what depression feels like, I know what it is, but it just sort of felt sort of hopeless, I guess, is where that came from. I was sort of spinning my wheels health-wise. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like doing anything. I had certainly gained some weight. I was waking up in the middle of the night at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, but then after I ate lunch in the afternoon in particular, I had to take a nap for 10 or 15 minutes. I was eating all the time. I was craving certain foods. I'm not a sweets eater, but I was craving tons of salty foods. And finally, something in my memory just clicked. And I was seeing a different OB at the time at GYN. I'm not well past the childbearing age, but a different GYN. And she gave me some ideas for some things. We tried some supplements, but things converged, and all of a sudden a light bulb went off. And I went back to my original Hotze packet from 2006, and I went back to his website and I started looking, and I realized it's adrenal fatigue. All of these symptoms I was going through were adrenal fatigue. Now, if you go and do some research on, and I can talk about it in another video when I talk about resources, but the hypopituitary axis, where it talks about all the hormones being regarding pituitary and the thyroid gland and adrenals and all kinds of other things that are happening. It's all very interconnected, and that's very true for me. But on the surface, just like I said, aha moment, this is adrenal fatigue. And armed with that, I picked up the phone, I called Dr. Sheridan at Hotze again and said, I want to come back. So they got me an appointment in, and he put me back on the regimen I had been on before, for the most part, at some reduced dosages. So I was back on the cortisol to support my adrenals. I was back on testosterone. I went back on progesterone for PMS symptoms, and I went back on compounded thyroid medication through his pharmacy, or through the Hotze pharmacy. And that was the end of May. I had a big trip. My husband and I went to the Dominican Republic at the first part of June, and I was determined before I left, I needed to feel better for that trip. I did feel better for that trip. I didn't feel wonderful by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a very good trip, and I'm glad that I went to see Dr. Sheridan again before I left for that trip. So over the summer and into the fall, things have steadily improved. Again, I'll mention that my particular office with Hotze, they have a terrific phone nurse program, online program where you can contact the nurse. We've done a lot of tweaking over the last few months. Slowly but surely, I've been very impatient. Things have improved. I would say somewhere around September, October of this year, I actually started feeling well enough to begin to take better care of myself. I started eating better. I started not wearing so much, sloppy sweatshirt, legging kind of situation. Felt more like getting out of bed and getting myself ready on a more daily basis, rather than sort of dragging through the day and working through some of those not feeling so good days. So I would say at this point, I definitely have a lot more good days than I do bad days. And I would say my bad days are not nearly as bad as they were. Probably the biggest thing I'm struggling with now is I do still have some issues with adrenal fatigue. I'll go along just fine for a long time. I sleep really well. I feel refreshed. I don't have any problems during the day. And then all of a sudden I'll have a day where I will have woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and then doze back off 3:30, wake up again, doze back off, wake up at 4, and sort of have that pattern until I finally get out of bed at my usual time, which is about 4:45 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and get my day going. And then that same day I'll have what I call the post-afternoon lunch kind of slump, where I have to get up and either go stretch my legs or go put my feet up for 10 or 15 minutes. But those are becoming fewer and far between, but we're still working on that. I'm still on a fairly significant dose of cortisol, considering what the options are, and I'll go into that more when I do my video on my medications. Probably the biggest thing, though, I struggle with still are female hormones. I am still having a lot of problems with my cycles. They are either super short. I had one last month that was I had finished my period and I think a week later it started again. Or they're a lot longer than I expected them to be, or just a lot of things, a lot of cramps, just all the things that you would expect that you said when you say PMS, they're out there. They are certainly much more improved than they were earlier this summer, but we're still working on that and tweaking. I have a higher dosage of some things as of a couple of months ago, so we have to let that pan out for another month and kind of see how that's going. I'm a little impatient with it, but that's okay. I will get through it and it'll get better. So at this point in time, I'm really, really happy with my progress. I'm kicking myself in the pants for having stopped in 2013 due to money. I obviously know that it probably would have broken the bank had I kept it up, but I'm in a position now where I have the means through some support from my family to be able to afford what I need to do in order to make my health a priority, and that's what I'm doing. I'm very pleased. My husband tells me that I'm much more like he remembers me when before things fell apart in 2013 and 2014 and I stopped taking all the medications. So do I wish I didn't have it? I think that there's a lot to a journey that can be learned. I don't have any regrets about pretty much anything. Do I wish I'd done things differently? Absolutely, but I don't know that I'm the kind of person that spends time on regret, because I think it's easy to get mired in that and live sort of in the past and coulda, woulda, shoulda. But I do wish I had done some things, certainly in the last 5 or 6 years, differently, and stopping working with Dr. Sheridan and trying to strike out and do some things on my own, and then having to go back has been one of the most difficult things that I have done in my life. Trying to, at times, it feels like I'm clawing my way back to good health, and I do want to share, though, that it is possible. It takes a lot of research and stamina and persistence on the part of the person who is suffering, whether it's you or someone you know, but it can be done. Is it frustrating? Absolutely. Is it time consuming? Yes, it can be. And is it kind of a 2-step forward, 1 step back thing? Yes, sometimes 2 steps back, 1 step forward. But if you have the motivation to get through it and do what's right for yourself, it can be done. So that's what I have as far as my journey with Hashimoto's, and I will continue to record videos regarding this. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I have some other ideas planned. If you have any suggestions, let me know, and I'm happy to take those under consideration, and I will talk to you soon.